that coffee now? Where's it go?
Just outside the fence. Gotta be 300 meters long. Must have used some kind of drill to get it done that fast.
Well, don't rule out extremist gophers. How are your children?
Safe.
I thought he was bluffing. Those fuckers always say the device is rigged to their hearts, and none of them actually take the time to do it. You saved us. Thanks.
Crawford jumped on the grenade. I just gave him a little push.
Yeah, well, I sure as shit can't exhume him now.
That's not funny.
Sorry, I wasn't joking. You guys just scheduled this funeral so fast. Kind of weird, considering it's an active murder investigation, by the way. But we were literally going to dig him up tomorrow. Discreetly, of course.
Why?
Your chief was murdered by the 7th Cavalry. I get it. There's a history. But you still have to consider other possibilities, right? If, for instance, I was at the crime scene earlier, and you know what I saw? Tire tracks right at the base of the tree.
What kind of vehicle?
I'm sorry, did I say vehicle? No. No, it was a wheelchair. I mean, I get how you guys missed it. You know, he was your chief, he was your friend. It's hard to do your job well when you're that close to someone. That's why I'm here. Hey, did you know that he had a secret compartment in his closet?
What?
Yeah, I was over there talking to his wife, and while I was there, I found the secret fucking compartment. Isn't that insane?
Why were you looking in his closet?
Oh, well, when my dad was murdered, they found a secret compartment in his closet, so, you know, I always check. Once in a while, pans out.
What was in it?
You tell me. What was in it?
How the fuck should I know?
Well, his wife told me that you were the only person in that bedroom since he died. And frankly, Angela, you just don't strike me as the fainting type. Okay, I'll tell you. It was a bust. Just a big naked bust. That's it. However, I think there was something on that bust. I don't know. Maybe your pal Judd asked you to get rid of it if something ever happened, or, you know, maybe the two of you were having an affair, which makes no sense because your husband's fucking hot. But whatever it is, this much I know. Men who end up hanging from trees with secret compartments in their closets tend to think of themselves as good guys. And those who protect them think they're good guys too. But here's the thing about me, Sister Knight. I eat good guys for breakfast.
Ooh.
Welcome to Superhero Cinephiles. I'm Perry Constantine. I'm about to get to the discussion that Derek and I had about the first 3 parts of the Watchmen TV show, but first I just want to give you guys a bit of a disclaimer. During the call, we had some connection problems, a few little hiccups here and there, so there are some parts in this interview where Derek gets cut off, maybe, or where there's some overlap in our audio. So I've done my best to try to clean it up as much as I can, but there may have been some parts that I couldn't clean up, or that I just, or some parts that I just frankly missed. So apologies for any problems you have while listening to this episode. Hopefully we won't have these problems going forward. And thanks for understanding, and enjoy the show. Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I am half of your host, Perry Constantine, coming to you from the, so far, not quarantined Kagoshima, but we'll see how that goes.
And I am the other half, Derek Ferguson, coming to you from beautiful downtown Brooklyn, where I am safely ensconced and sequestered in my house. As we all know, right now we're going through a semi sort of lockdown here in New York, where, most everybody is encouraged to stay home. Where we're at right now.
How you doing, Derek?
I'm doing fine. So far, I've been, staying in the house, getting stuff done, writing, reading, catching up on, my TV watching. I've binge watched the last couple of seasons of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
How is that? I've only seen like a handful of episodes of it.
You know what? I like it, but it's that type of humor that I like that's very mean-spirited and very cruel and very like Seinfeld cranked up to 11, where people are very, they do mean things to each other, and a lot of people say, why do they have to be mean to each other? Well, that's kind of the humor of the show, is
right.
No, I was saying, and I'm planning on finally catching up because I've been hearing for years and I've never watched it. So finally, I said, you know what? I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch Westworld. I plan on doing that this weekend, Westworld, because everybody keeps telling me how terrific it is and how fantastic it is and how great. Finally, I said, you know what? I'm going to bite the bullet and watch it.
Yeah, I watched the first season and I really enjoyed it, but I've got the second season. I just haven't sat down and watched it yet. Though I did start watching Legion, if you ever saw that show, based on the X-Men character that was on FX. I think it ran for 3 seasons, and that's been an interesting show to watch because it's not what you'd expect from like a show based on the X-Men. It deals a lot with like the way they handle the psychic powers and everything in it. It's a really unique take on it, and like the only basic, I just kind of got it. I finished the first season. I just started part of the second season, and it's very much like the main villain is pretty much just the Shadow King, and just like it's very trippy. It's very interesting to watch, and it's also got an actress who's in what we're going to be talking about today, and that Jean Smart's in that too.
Oh, really? Okay. I think I watched like the first 3 episodes, and I liked it. And I watched it mainly because Aubrey Plaza was in it.
Yeah.
And I love Aubrey Plaza. So I have no idea why I didn't continue watching it. I probably just got distracted with something else, which is easier to do now. But what is happening since FX is on Hulu now, I've been catching up on like shows. I said, okay, I'll be able to catch up on shows that I missed. And Legion is one of those shows I want to watch because everybody was telling me how great it was and how trippy it is. And, it's not like a traditional superhero show. So I've been wanting to get back into watching it for a while. So I'm definitely going to put that on my list to also watch after I'm going to watch that.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I'll say this too: don't fall asleep to it because you'll get some trippy dreams. Because that happened to me one time.
Really?
Yeah, I was laying on the couch and it was late at night and I kind of dozed off watching it and just like I can't even describe like the kind of trippy dreams I ended up having after that.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes that'll happen to me. Like there's a movie that I'll be watching and I'll sleep and the movie will get integrated into my dreams and stuff like that. And I think I'm still watching the movie, but I'm actually dreaming.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. And with Legion, that's you get you feel like you're going insane when that happens.
I've heard that visually it's very, very good.
Oh yeah, like they do some really unique things. Like it's very stylistic and it's I think I'm not sure if it came to a logical conclusion or if it ended up ending because of the Disney merger, but whatever the case, like I hope they get that guy, Noah Hawley. I can't remember his name, the showrunner, but he at one point was talking to Fox, I think, about doing a Doctor Doom movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so hopefully he'll still get something. He'll still be able to do something after when Disney starts utilizing the Fox properties more.
Legion only lasted like 3 seasons?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it only lasted 3 seasons. So I guess that the show kind of got cut off kind of short.
Okay, that's too bad then. Maybe they'll be able to do something with it, but we'll see how it works going forward. But I also picked up Birds of Prey because that's now it's now on. They ended up releasing it early on iTunes, though I haven't actually had a chance to watch it yet because I bought it on release day, so I bought it on Tuesday and. Tuesday night, my girlfriend really wanted to see it too, so I wanted to watch it with her. But Tuesday night, she didn't feel like watching a movie, and then last night I worked at night, and then when I came home, she was already asleep. So hopefully we'll be able to watch it tonight, but we'll see.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Yeah, I was going to watch because now they've got that new Vin Diesel movie, Bloodshot.
Yeah.
That's on. So I went on Amazon. I said, oh, well, maybe I'll watch it because, I really don't know too much about Bloodshot, but I like Vin Diesel. So I said, let me watch it. Now, they want you to buy the movie. You can't even rent it.
Yeah.
You got to buy it. And they're like charging something like $22 to watch it. I said, bump that. I don't like Vin Diesel that much, not to.
Yeah, Birds of Prey was also $20, but I didn't mind paying that for buying it without seeing it because we were going to see it in the theater anyway. We were talking about going to see it like last weekend. But movie tickets in Japan cost $20 anyway. So, we're paying half price to watch it here at home. And, now we don't have to worry about going to the theater, don't have to worry about, parking or dealing with traffic or any of that stuff. And, and then we can watch it again and again and again. So,
yeah, exactly. Because my wife, she wanted to watch The Invisible Man, the new one. But again, you go on there and it's like $19 just to rent it.
Yeah, I thought that was a little bit weird. Like they have all these. I mean, I understand why they're doing it, but if it's just you by yourself, like you're not going to want to spend $20 to rent a movie at home. But if I understand if it's like, you get a bunch of people over or something like that, or you're watching with your family or that kind of stuff. But
right. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Like if I was going to have like a bunch of people over to watch it. Yeah, okay, well, I'd spring for it. I say, yeah, okay, yeah, no problem. But if it's just me and my wife, nah, because we used to like rent movies for like, from Amazon for like $5 or something like that.
Right, right.
So we're not, no, we didn't want to. Let me put it this way. The bottom line is we didn't want to see that bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I had read a few of the Bloodshot comics, the relaunch stuff when they did when Valiant did their big like reboot a few years back. I read some of the Bloodshot stuff that came out then. And it was pretty interesting. Like the first trailer I saw for Bloodshot, I'm like, well, okay, it just looks like a Vin Diesel movie. It doesn't look like anything like the Bloodshot comic books. But then other trailers that came out, I guess they were just trying to capitalize on the Vin Diesel stuff in that first trailer. But in other trailers that came out, it looked like it was closer to the comics than the original trailer made it seem.
My thing is, if I was to talk to Vin Diesel, man, listen, just go back to doing XXX and Riddick. Mm-hmm. Stop trying to, create franchises that keep bombing one after another. Because he did like The Last Witch Hunter. That didn't go anywhere. There was something else. And he did go back to doing XXX. He did a XXX movie that came out a couple of years ago where they had to explain how he came back to life because off his character. But the movie actually was really more like a Fast and Furious movie.
Right.
Then, it was like Fast and Furious Light.
The thing about Vin Diesel is like I've never seen him as like really leading man material. Like he's good and more of a support. I think that's why I like the later Fast and Furious movies because it's more of an ensemble cast, so it's not all on his shoulders to carry it.
Yeah. Well, it's the A-Team. Basically, it's like I call it the blue collar version of It's like a cross between Mission Impossible and the A-Team.
Yeah, and although I'm not sure how interested I'm going to be in the series going forward, because like one of the reasons I stuck with and when I came back into it with 5 was because of Dwayne Johnson being in it, and now he and Jason Statham are off doing Hobbs and Shaw instead, which I just watched the other day, and it's fantastically over the top.
Isn't that thing great?
It's so fun. It's so much fun. Like, just watching the two of them riff back and forth. And then you got Ryan Reynolds in there, like, being this awestruck CIA agent who's in love with The Rock. It's hilarious.
It is. And apparently, make 2 or 3 more of these things, as long as I keep making money. So that means, and then there was that whole thing where Dwayne Johnson and Vin don't get along anymore for whatever reason.
Yeah,
I have no idea what that's all about. So, because I don't think Dwayne Johnson is in this one.
So he's not in it. Paul Walker's gone. Gal Gadot's gone. What's his name? The guy who played Han. He was my favorite character in Fast 5. He's gone too. So it's just like I'm not really interested in watching.
Oh, they're bringing him back.
Oh, they are bringing him back. Okay.
Yeah, they're bringing him back. They had the well, of course now movies, they spoil everything that's in the trailer. So if you've seen the latest trailer, you've seen that that they show that that Han is
okay. So that might bring me back, because I'm not interested in watching what's his name? The guy who plays Roman.
Oh, Tyrese.
Gibson. Yeah. I hate him. He's so annoying.
Well, he's supposed to be annoying.
Yeah, he does it he does it too well. Like, he's just, his character, I remember a friend of mine dragged me to the theater to see Too Fast, Too Furious, and I hated it then, and I hated his character most of all. And just like in every single one of these movies, he's still there, and I'm just like, just kill this guy off already. He's such a pain in the ass.
Okay, you mentioned Han.
Mm-hmm.
The other day, about weeks ago, I'm sitting at home and I'm watching, I'm flipping through the channels. I'm trying to find something to watch, everything like that. And I see that there's this movie called Better Luck Tomorrow, which is directed by Justin Lin.
Oh, yeah. I remember
the guy that plays Han, he's in. Okay, so you've seen it.
Yeah.
Because apparently this movie is the origin of Han. It's the same character that goes to the Fast and Furious.
Oh, no way. I never even picked up on that. I'm going to have to rewatch that movie. I haven't seen that movie since like I was in college.
Well, what I did was that I watched the movie and I really liked it. It was a good movie.
Yeah.
And I recommend it to all you guys that are listening to Better Luck Tomorrow, directed by Justin Lin.
Yeah.
Great crime movie with an Asian cast.
Yeah.
Basically, it's about a bunch of high school kids who become criminals.
Right.
They kind of like fall ass backwards. They don't mean to become criminals, but they kind of like get caught up in that life. But what is the most interesting thing besides, everything else is that the character of Han, who we see in the Fast and Furious, this is his origin story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's interesting. I never even realized that. I haven't watched that movie in so long. I'm gonna have to break it out and watch it again. But yeah, that was a good movie. It was this small little independent film, and it just got like complete. And I found it. It was like back in the Blockbuster days. Like, it was on sale for like $2 or something, so I bought it. And yeah, I really ended up liking it. And now Justin Lin, of course, he went on. I think he did Fast 5, didn't he?
I think he did like 2 or 3 of the Fast and Furious movies, like, if I'm not mistaken.
He did those, and then he did Aquaman.
Yeah.
And I believe he also did the first 2 Insidious movies. So, he's was it him who did that? Double check, make sure. I know he didn't do Insidious. Who did Insidious then?
I don't know. I've never been into the Insidious thing, so I have no doubt. But I do know that he did the Star Trek movie.
Yeah, I'm getting them. I'm mixing them up. So James Wan, who also did Furious 7, and James Wan is the one who did Aquaman and Insidious, and then Justin Lin, he did Fast 5 and Fast and Furious 6 and Star Trek Beyond. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, like, the guy has got, some range as a director. He does, he does a lot of different things.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like he also did...
he's not just a one-trick pony.
Yeah, it looks like he also directed F9. So that makes sense why they had, why they brought back Han in that one.
Mm-hmm. Because Han first showed up in Tokyo Drift.
Right. Yeah.
That was the third one.
Yeah.
That was set in Tokyo. So he showed up in that one. And then I think, he comes back in the one that's in Rio de Janeiro. That's Fast 5.
That's Fast 5. Yeah.
So he comes back in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he dies because Jason Statham's character kills him, I think in, what was it, 6 or 7?
7.
Yeah.
He kills him in 7.
I think it was like the end of 6. It was like a post-credit scene in 6, and then 7 was when Jason Statham's character was the villain.
Right. Yeah, he was the villain. What kind of was weird to me how now they like kind of pretended that never happened, that, like Jason Statham tried to kill all of them in one of the movies. It's like, we're just going to ignore that ever happened.
And then in F8, they bring him in as a member of the team. And they do that where they bring it, because they did the same, like The Rock, though, his character didn't kill anyone at least. But, they did that too, where he started off as a villain, but he was so popular, they made him a regular cast member.
Yeah, exactly. They had to like kind of make a part of the team and everything like that. So it's it's really weird how they do that. They introduce these characters as villains or, the antagonists, and then they become so popular. Then they say, okay, well, now we got to figure out a way that they'll become part of the team, which is why they had that whole thing where Jason Statham has to rescue Vin Diesel's son.
Yeah.
And that was his way of, I guess, redeeming himself. And that's how he got accepted into the team, So it's good. But you know what? I enjoy them. I love the Fast and Furious movies. People say, oh, they're terrible movies. No, they're not. They're entertaining as hell.
They're very entertaining.
The main point to me.
Yeah, very entertaining. Like, it's just... I love that they've got this attitude where they're just like, we're just going to go completely over the top.
They don't care. And like I've been telling people, I said, you know what? The Fast and Furious movies, the last 2 or 3 of them have been better James Bond movies than the actual James Bond movies, as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So today we're talking, so we're going to be doing our first actual TV show we're covering on this, and that is Watchmen, all 9 episodes. And so this is going to be unique because you and I made a decision when we started the show that we were going to kind of avoid TV shows for the most part, unless it's something really special. And this qualifies as something really special, I think.
Well, yeah. I mean, the first one we did the, the Crisis. That was the first one we did. But again, that was a unique case. And I think that we're justified in doing this because, of course, it's connected to one of the most popular superhero and controversial superhero movies ever made, Watchmen, which we covered. Mm-hmm. And since this is an extension of that movie, it's justified. And also it had such an impact on fans of the movie, and people who even didn't like the movie ended up liking the TV show. I talked to a lot of people that said they hated the movie, but they loved the TV show. well,
yeah, and I'm one of those, because we talked about this. We talked about the Watchmen movie. I didn't like it that much because, I thought it was a movie. It's good, but as a Watchmen adaptation, I thought it fell flat.
Right.
Now, this TV show, contrary to what some people believe, is they didn't do it as a sequel to the movie, but it's actually a sequel to the comic book.
Right. Yeah.
So they actually do something in this TV show that they didn't do in the movie, is that they actually show you the squid that Veidt dropped on New York.
Yeah, we see the squid.
And we didn't even see that in the comic book. Like, we only saw hints of the squid. We didn't see it full on. So, they take it further than even Dave Gibbons took it. And, now I remember when they announced that they were doing a Watchmen TV show, my first thought was, oh, good. They're going to do a new adaptation. And, doing Watchmen... adapting Watchmen as a TV show is really the only way you can adapt that story, because as we saw with the movie, there's so much stuff to cram in there, and a lot of stuff gets left out, even in the 3-hour director's cut.
Right. Yeah, that was the same thing I thought too when I first heard it. I said, oh, okay, well, they're going to do, and they're going to have the room to do the whole story finally. I said, okay, cool.
Right. But then they switched it up because then they said Damon Lindelof's going to do it, which I was a little bit nervous about because he did Lost, and after the first few seasons, Lost just kind of... They were trying to just keep it going without having any real idea of what they were doing anymore. And they were just kind of like throwing a whole bunch of stuff against the wall. And then, so that was like a red flag for me. And then the second red flag was when they said, well, we're not going to be doing an adaptation of the comic book. We're going to be doing a sequel to the comic book. And I thought, well, okay, I thought it was weird because I'm like, well, if you're going to do a sequel, wouldn't it make more sense to do it to the movie that everybody had seen as opposed to the comic book that only like a quarter of your audience has probably read? And that was my attitude going into this. So I was kind of skeptical of this going in, and I'm just like, well, I'll probably get around to it someday. But I hadn't planned to, and then people started watching it, and they're saying, "Oh, this is amazing!" So I started catching up on it, and now that the whole thing's out, I ended up buying the whole series on iTunes for this episode.
Oh, so you didn't start watching it from the beginning? You didn't start it from the beginning. You caught up to it later on.
Yeah, I started with like episode 4, and I binged like all 4 episodes at once.
Oh,
and that's when I started getting into it.
All right, I didn't know that. No, me, I watched it. From the first of all because once I found Regina King was going to be starring in it. And I've been in love with Regina King. She's a fantastic actress. I mean, I remember she was a child actor on the 227, and I've been following her career ever since then. I think I've just seen about everything that she's done. And she's like one of those actresses that I always, even if what she's in is crap, she's going to be good. Mm-hmm. She was in the season of, she was in one season of 24. She was in one season of American Crime Story. She's just been in like a ton of stuff, and like everything that she's in, I always find myself saying, damn, she is so good at whatever she does. So I was in it right from the start. And, even my wife, not care, as I've said before, she doesn't care for superhero movies. She, we watch Watchmen before we watch this. When the first episode came on, I said to her, okay, well, you've never seen Watchmen, so you want to watch the movie? She said, oh, yeah, well, I'll watch it. I said, okay, so this way you will have an idea of what the background of everything is. And she said, yeah, she'll put it on. So, I threw it on, and I've got this cut, and we threw it on, and she watched it, and she said, oh, okay. She said, I didn't get it. She said, but I said, that's all right, honey. Nobody does. So yeah. I said, nobody really does. But we watched the TV show, and by like the third episode, she was hooked. She said, this isn't nothing like the movie. And I said, oh, yeah. I said, yeah, well, you got a point. It is nothing like the movie.
And a big part of that is because, when we talked about this in our Watchmen movie episode, but Zack Snyder, you get the sense that he didn't really understand what Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons were trying to do with the movie, with the comic book. And so when he made the movie, he had like the wrong take on a lot of stuff. So Rorschach becomes more of a heroic figure. The comedian is is a bit more sympathetic in some ways. Like it's much more focused on like the action and the fight scenes and all that, and like all the deep character stuff, all the like the flaws that these characters have, which is really what it was about a bunch of broken people. That kind of falls to the wayside in the movie. But the TV show, like Lindelof shows that he understands what Moore and Gibbons were doing, and he brings that to the TV show. So let's just jump into it. We'll start with we're doing the first 3 episodes in this episode, and so the first episode, it's summer and we're running out of ice. And this is when we're introduced to well, first off, Regina King plays Angela Abar, which is another allusion to black superheroes, because Abar, which we covered in our last episode, the first black Superman.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it was something that you pointed out when we were doing that, and I said, holy shit, I never even made that connection. And while I was watching this episode, and you know what I love it that I was watching the first episode, and there was still things in there that I was picking up on that I hadn't seen the first time. Like, I never noticed until I watched it this time that they get the original Watchmen smiley face in there when she's doing the thing with the eggs.
Yeah, and it's the cool thing about it is it's reversed too, because in the comic book, the face is white or the face is yellow, and it's just like a standard smiley face. But this one, it's the eyes and the mouth that are yellow instead.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, it's stuff that I didn't catch the first time around. I didn't catch the first time around that the actual title was from the musical Oklahoma, which we see is being performed by an all-black cast.
Right. Yeah, and there's also a line. There's one of the songs is "Poor Judd is Dead," and that's where that line comes from. It's someone running out of ice. And in this movie, the movie ends with the sheriff, Judge Crawford, dead.
Yeah.
So it's all these little tie-ins and allusions they make. So yeah, it's amazingly well done. It's all he throws in, just like Moore and Gibbons did with the comic book. They throw all this stuff into it and into the background that you don't notice the first time around or even the second time around. And just like in the comic book, it ends with the bloody smiley face, right? The comedian's badge with the blood on it.
Right.
This time it's Judge badge, which has the blood on it. So it's a little twist on it. But they're still doing so. It kind of starts off in a way that kind of reminded me of Superman Returns and The Force Awakens, where it's like, okay, we're doing sort of a remake, sort of an original thing, but then so that's kind of the feel you get when you get to the end of the first episode. But then it does veer in completely different directions after that.
Yeah, because first of all, let me just say right off the bat that Damon Lindelof, there's a surety that he has with this series that he didn't have with Lost. Maybe it's because he put more thought into it and he took more time, writing the overall story. But like you said, there's things that are thrown in there that they're not just thrown off the cuff. It's things that are callbacks to the comic book and even some callbacks to the movie. And it's little things that are thrown in that letting me know that there's a sure hand that wrote this script, that knew exactly where he was going with it and what he wanted to do.
Yeah, and just like the movie did, there's some fantastic world building in this. Because the comic book, this is something that's often overlooked in the comic book with people who've only read it maybe once or twice. You don't really realize it until you read it, a few times, that the entire world has been completely changed by the introduction of superheroes. So you've got things like electric cars, you've got four-legged chickens being served in a restaurant, all sorts of things like that. Nixon was able to abolish term limits, and he was president into the 80s. Vietnam is an American state now because Dr. Manhattan easily won the war. And all these little things are changes in the background that you don't really notice the first time you read the book. And they continue that trend in this one. So one thing you'll notice, they never use computers or really like cell phones or anything like that in this show. And there's a reason for that, because and they find out about this in so just like the comic book, they had all this supplemental material with excerpts from Hollis Mason's books. You get one of an article that Night Owl wrote. A police, I think they had like Rorschach's, the psychiatrist, like his report, I think was in there as well.
Yeah.
An interview with Adrian Veidt. All sorts of like supplemental material is in the background, and it really helps. And most people, I think, are probably like me. They skip the supplemental material when they read the book, but the last time I read it, before we talked about the movie, is I went through for the first time and read all the supplemental material, and it really gives you a much deeper understanding of the world. And the TV show did something similar. They had what's called PDpedia, which is on hbo.com/PDpedia. And it is basically like reports compiled by Agent Petey.
Who is partnered up with the former Silk Spectre, Laurie Blake.
Yeah, and so he mentions in that episode that he's got a PhD in history. He did his thesis on the police riots and all this kind of stuff. So he's really knowledgeable about this. So it has all these documents in there, and one of the documents, like one of the introductory documents, talks about the use of technology. And after the squid, because everyone still believes that it was an actual interdimensional invasion, which is what Adrian Veidt, Ozymandias, disguised it as and wanted people to think, whereas in the movie they changed it to him trying to mimic the powers of Dr. Manhattan. But this show, it goes full on with the squid,
which I actually like. I know we went back and forth about that, about them changing the ending for the movie. But for the purposes of this TV show, because they do have the room to explore it more, and I'm glad they went with the squid, because I'm not sure, but I do believe the character Looking Glass. They never come out and state it, but I get the impression that he does have actual superpowers from the fact that he was traumatized by being close to the squid when it landed in Manhattan, because he was in New Jersey.
Yeah, definitely, and that's we'll talk about that more when we get to the fourth episode in our next segment. But yeah, there's some sort of like because one of the after effects of the squid was there was a lot of psychic feedback that happened.
Right, exactly.
And a lot of people died as a result of the psychic feedback. And I got to give Lindelof credit, because the whole reason Snyder didn't use the squid is because he thought it would be too difficult for audiences to understand. And Lindelof says, we don't care if you haven't read the book. We're putting the damn squid in this thing. And, he just goes right in and does it.
Well, there's a whole lot of that all throughout these 3 episodes. Like you said, there's a lot of things he throws. And one thing that I appreciate, that he doesn't stop to explain every little thing. He just goes ahead and does it, and just trust that, okay, you're going to stick with it long enough for him to explain what it is that you're seeing. Like, I like the fact that there's a part where there's a rain of little baby squid from the sky, and everybody just treats it like, okay, baby squids are falling from the sky, and they treat it very matter of factly. And now we explanation later on, but at the time it just happens, and we just say, okay, we'll just go with it and just trust that, okay, he's going to tell us what's happening later on.
Right. Yeah. And one of the things they do is they said in the Peteypedia files that they had kind of halted technological developments because they were worried that technology had somehow triggered something that caused the dimensional incursion. So a lot of technological development kind of came to a halt. So they don't have like the internet. They don't really rely on computers as much. So that's why you don't see any of that stuff really in this show.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of that. I think really the only time if I remember, there's scenes in the police station. I seem to remember that you do see like little computer terminals sitting on the desk of the police. Yeah, but you're right. People don't have computers in their house. You don't see people, with their laptops. You don't see that, here. Which again is something that you don't pick up on at first, but when you watch it again, it's like you say, wait a minute, there's something missing here. They say, oh, wait a minute. There's no computers. There's no cell phones.
Yeah, and also going on with the world building is so the end of the Watchmen comic book. There were these background things that Robert Redford was thinking about running for president. And so in this series, they say, okay, he did run for president, and because there are no term limits, he's like in his 4th term now as president. And one of the things he's done is he instituted reparations for slavery, and which are called dismissively called Redfordations by racists and stuff like that. But
that's actually a whole little subplot in itself in this thing about the fact that Robert Redford gave reparations to black people, because it's continually referred to, and there's a scene in a classroom where one of the children asks the Regina King character, well, how did you open up your business? Did you do it with your Redforations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's kind of like a little subplot of its own that runs through the whole show. Yeah, because apparently Robert Redford is not a popular president in this world.
There's some interesting things they do with this, and like Angela was born in Vietnam. She was born and raised in Vietnam, which is an American state, and so
right.
And the teacher mentions, were you born in Vietnam before it became a state or after, right? And she's like, oh wow, it's a state in this movie. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a funeral scene, and we see that the American flag has been changed, that the stars are in a circle now.
Yeah, and there's 51 of them instead of 50.
Yeah, and there's a whole lot more of them than, yeah. So presumably Puerto Rico is now...
I was going to mention that, like, because they make Vietnam a state, but they still haven't acknowledged Puerto Rico as one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I said, presumably Puerto Rico said, but they never come out and say it. They never say, and I said, well, how did you make Vietnam a state before? But then again, it goes back to the whole movie and the comic book where, the United States won the war because of Dr. Manhattan. Right. And, apparently they just went, he just went over there and he just conquered the country. Yeah. Apparently. Because as we see later on, I'm not trying to jump ahead, folks, but in later episodes, we see that there's all kinds, like, apparently they have a whole day dedicated to Dr. Manhattan in Vietnam. They have a holiday,
And there's a lot of that, like, kind of resentment / there are mixed feelings about it. Kind of like if you go to Hawaii, there's also kind of mixed feelings about being an American state among Hawaiians, because there are some people who feel like, we were an independent nation and then America took us over, basically. So there's a lot of mixed feelings about that kind of stuff. The way this show opens is it opens in Tulsa, Oklahoma in the 1920s during the Oklahoma race riots, which was this assault, basically, like full-on assault by the Ku Klux Klan and other white supremacists against what was at the time called Black Wall Street.
Well, it was a massacre, plain and simple. Yeah. And actually, one of the remarkable things about this episode is that this is something that a lot of people, black and white, did not know about, because I had a lot of friends of mine, black and white, they were contacting me and they said, wait a minute, did this really happen, or was this something that they just... I said, no, this actually happened. And the reason why I know that it actually happened is because, what was it? Back in the late 90s, there was a movie called Rosewood, directed by John Singleton, starring Ving Rhames and John Voight. And it was about a town in Florida called Rosewood, where the same thing happened. The same thing happened. This was going on quite a lot, believe it or not, that there was all of these black settlements and towns and small cities where black people were doing very well. And, everybody from the mayor down to the wino that was on the corner, everybody was black. And these towns were wiped out and people were massacred by the Klan and white supremacists. So, yeah, this actually happened. And for this TV show to start off with that, I mean, first of all, Lindelof is putting right up front in your face what this show is going to be about. It's not going to be just about people in costumes. Right. It's going to be about race and how not only superheroes, well, not really superheroes, they're people in costumes for the most part, but this is going to be about race, unabashedly about race. And that whole theme carries through the entire series. But it's a powerful way to start off, the series. And I was reading something about some people had seen this episode and they saw echoes of how Superman was sent to another planet, that the little boy is sent away from, this town that's being destroyed. It's kind of like the same kind of analogy.
Oh yeah, very much so. Like I picked up on that once we get into when they did the Hooded Justice episode, focus on Will, that really came through to me. Like, oh my God, it's basically the story of Superman, and just like the superhero comics started with this this refugee from a dying world being sent to Earth. The same thing happens with, they basically made it the same thing here in Watchmen, because Superman was the first superhero, and Will, as we later find out, is the first superhero in this universe because he becomes Hooded Justice, who in the comic books was also the first costumed adventurer who appeared on the streets. So they do a really good job of making that illusion. And yeah, you're right. Like, Lindelof made a conscious effort to make this story about race, and which also sets it apart from the original, because the original was all about Cold War politics. But this takes it in a different direction, because you can't do, it doesn't make sense to do a series set in 2019 that's about the Cold War.
Exactly. And you know what? This points out something also that you and I have talked about, and it's a real bugaboo to me about, because we hear it all the time. People talk about, oh, how come they don't do anything different? How come they don't do anything new? Why they do the same thing all over again? This is definitely not the same thing as the movie or comic book.
No.
This is a brand new story with brand new characters for the most part, but set in that universe.
Yeah, and it's the way it expands that story and takes it to a different, like, for years people were saying you can't do a sequel to Watchmen. What would you do? There's no way you can take that story. There's no next logical step in that story. That story is completely self-contained. And that was I was one of the people who believed that too. So that was one of my red flags when they announced this series. But Lindelof, God bless him, he found a way to make it work. And he showed that, no, you can do a sequel to this story.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't do a direct sequel. You take this world and you say, okay, well, let me go 25 years road and see where this world has developed and how it's developed in that time, but at the same time, it's directly linked to the past. And I would be highly remiss if I didn't point out that the first thing we see is this little boy. He's sitting in a movie theater and he's watching a black and white silent movie. And it's a movie about Bass Reeves, the famous Oklahoma man.
Yeah, and the movie's called Trust in the Law.
Right. And that's the first heroic, which again is a callback to what we found out later on, because this is the first heroic image that we see in the movie, a black lawman. Mm-hmm. And watching it again, I said, oh, okay, he's got Bass Reeves in. And again, Bass Reeves, just like the massacre that took place in Tulsa, Bass Reeves for the longest time was a heroic figure that nobody knew about. It's only been in recent years that he's been rediscovered, and people have been saying, oh, wow, we never heard about this guy.
And he was actually just one of many, because one thing we've talked about before is that the Old West wasn't as lily white as Hollywood has made people believe. Like, there was a lot of diversity there, because you had Black people, you had Asian people, you had Native Americans who, they weren't welcome in the big cities, so they moved out to the frontier.
Yeah. And as I was telling people, because people ask, oh, well, all of these towns were settled by Black people. I said, yeah, because after the Civil War, they went west. They went where there was no white people.
Yeah.
They were done with white people. They said, okay, well, you know what? We're going to go west. Whereas all of these, if you, one of my favorite movies, Buck and the Preacher, is about that, because Sidney Poitier as Buck, he's taking this black wagon train west. They're going as far west as they can, to find someone where they can settle and they won't be bothered with white people. It's just that simple. So yeah, I said there was all kinds of different settlements that you had that was, it was nothing but immigrants.
Right. Yeah.
They just went out there because it was all this land. Nobody else was using it. They made the deal with the Indian and say, okay, well, if you go over there and you don't slaughter too many buffalo, you can live over. And, everybody was getting along until, of course, your people came along.
White people, we just mess everything up, man.
Oh my God, yeah! I don't know what we're gonna do with y'all guys. Yeah. I don't know what we're gonna do with y'all. Y'all just can't leave shit alone.
What? I apologize.
No, listen. You're right. And folks, listen, I'm going to tell y'all right now, you know what? Since the Watchmen is dealing with race, it's probably going to be a lot of things that I'm going to say you're not going to like. So I'm telling you right now in advance, because I'm not going to bite my tongue when it comes to this subject. I'm not. I mean, I'm sorry, but hey, it is what it is.
Which is one of the reasons I really wanted to do this, because I knew that you would not be holding your tongue with this kind of stuff. So I'm really glad that we're going to have that happen.
Oh, no. You know, because if I did, it would be a disservice.
Exactly, yeah.
Because if Damon Lindelof was, if he had the balls tongue about it, because I respect that man to the highest for, putting this out there, really.
Yeah,
he didn't have to do it, but he could have played it safe, but he didn't.
And that's what's so remarkable about this, because I mean, this story about the Tulsa riots, it's being brought to the screen by a white guy who's and all these issues of race and everything. So this also it shows that there's kind of this idea a lot when it comes to modern fiction that if you're white, if you're a straight white male, you should not be writing about issues that affect black people. You should not be writing about issues that affect women or anything like that, right? There's that kind of idea that, and there's some truth to that, right? There are plenty of black authors who can tell their own stories, but Lindelof proves that you can still be a white guy and still tell stories like this. You just have to make sure you treat it with respect and reverence, and you do your research on it.
My position is always that if you're a human being with any kind of empathy at all, you can write about other people.
Right.
I'm a black guy, right? White characters, I don't write them as white characters unless I'm actually trying to make a point. Mm-hmm. But, I just write them just as characters. I've written, female characters. I just write them as people. If you just write people as people, and like you said, it's obvious that he did his research into this, and he has respect for the characters, and he has respect for their point of view. And really, that's all you need to write a well engaging story, which is what we have here. Exactly.
Yeah. And, one of the really interesting things they do is when they bring it to the modern day, right? You have a guy getting pulled over by a cop. And it's like a flip of what we see in the modern day, right? It's a black cop going to a white guy.
Well, actually, first of all, it's funny because you see the guy and he looks like your typical Southern redneck, right?
Right.
But he's listening to hardcore rap music.
Yeah, I caught that too, yeah.
And then he gets pulled over by the cop, and it's a black cop wearing a mask. Mm-hmm. And, he's all nervous and scared. And like you said, yeah, it's a flip on what we're used to seeing. Mm-hmm. And the white guy's nervous. He's obviously nervous. And, he said, oh, my God, I got pulled over by the cop. And he says something. And then, we see sheer terror on his face because the cop said, well, what did you say?
Yeah.
And now, as a black man who has been, I automatically, I start feeling sorry for him because I've been pulled over by the cops, and I don't know. And so, oh my God, am I going to go home tonight or
right,
what?
Yeah.
So if you got good writing and if you just write with some empathy and respect for what you're writing about, you can make viewers go anywhere you want. And he got me with that scene because I'm saying, well, the cop is black. I'm supposed to be feeling for the cop. No, I'm feeling for the poor white guy because I've been in that position.
Right. And it shows like how the balance of power in America has kind of shifted as a result of reparations. Because now you've got the black guy in a position of power and the white guy who's the one who's fearing for his life kind of thing. But they also have another interesting thing. When the cop goes back to his car, he has to get permission to get his gun unlocked. Right, they have to unlock it at the station. He can't. They can't just draw on people like that, which was an interesting way of doing that because there's been all this all the talk about traffic stops gone wrong and police using excessive force, whereas this kind of it shows that the measures taken to prevent that can kind of go too far sometimes.
Yeah, it's kind of because at first you say to yourself, "Oh yeah, well that's a good idea," until the cop gets machine gunned, and then you say, "Oh well, damn, he should have been," and then you say, "Damn, he should have been able to protect himself," and so again, we see where the writing it makes you look at this situation and kind of weigh it and say, yeah, well, something. Okay, on the one hand, I thought it was a good idea, but maybe it isn't such a good idea. It makes you think, and something. As me, and that I'm good with entertainment for entertainment's sake, but it's a bonus when you have entertainment that entertains you and also makes you think and weighs your own values and how you see society and the laws of our society, which is what goes on a lot in this series as we go on through it. You think about the laws of this society and how you feel about it and what works and what doesn't work and why this works and why this doesn't work and should this work and why this work that way. It's a lot. You remember earlier on when we were going on and on about, politics in our superhero movies and we were railing against people and say, oh, it's a superheroics. Well, you know what? This is very much political.
Very much political.
And societal. And it makes you it's not just people in costumes running around beating up on each other.
Right. Oh, but you did mention that the mask thing, the cop wears a mask. Now, that's something else that's happened in the years since the comic book. So the Keene Act in the comic book outlawed costume vigilantes. The only people who were allowed to operate were ones who were working for the government, like the Comedian and Dr. Manhattan. But all other superheroes were outlawed. Now, Keene's son in this series, because there was a few years ago, there was an event called the White Knight, where the 7th Cavalry, who wear Rorschach masks, and they're inspired by Rorschach because Rorschach's journal, if you remember the end of the comic book, he left it with the New Frontiersman, the kind of like fringe right-wing publication. And the New Frontiersman ended up publishing excerpts from the journal, which ended up creating a whole new conspiracy culture with people, being suspicious about the squid and basically kind of like, and Rorschach has become kind of like a folk hero to these people. And so the 7th Cavalry, who are a white supremacist group, they have co-opted Rorschach's mask for kind of like their symbol. So they found the names and the addresses of police officers a few years ago, and they went after them. They attacked them and killed a lot of people. And one of those people who was attacked was Angela Abar. So when we see her in the beginning, she says, I used to be a police officer, but after the White Knight, I retired. And now she's opening a bakery. And then we find out what Keene did in this state was he said, we're going to allow police officers to wear masks and to have costumed identities because they're doing it for the law and to protect themselves and their families. And it's become a really popular initiative that other states are now thinking to adopt. So Angela is still a police officer, but she's one in secret. And her superhero identity is Sister Night, where she dresses as kind of like a nun. She has this black face paint smeared over her, and damn, she kicks all sorts of ass as Sister Night.
I love when we first see her, because when she gets the call, kind of like the bat signal, she gets like a special code on her pager. And when I saw that really took me back. I said, oh, my God, I haven't seen a pager in 30 years. And she gets it, and she goes to the bakery, and she's got like her own bat cave up under the bakery. And the way that she gets suited up, didn't that remind you of the Batman movies?
Oh, so much.
The way she gets suited up and she takes the hood and throws, and then she jumps in this car that looks a lot like it could have been the Batmobile, and she's like tearing ass through the streets.
Yeah, it's so they do it so well. And then, she goes straight to what's called Nixonville, which is where like where it's like the poor white people neighborhood. So you've got, and then she goes there and, you know, she takes this guy and she freaking throws him in the trunk.
Zero bullshit. She doesn't even play. She just kicks down his door and just snatches him up, knocks him out, and throws him in the trunk. Oh my God. Yeah, okay. Once again, establishing her character with you know, okay, we already know this is nobody to be, you know, she doesn't play around. Plain and simple. But apparently there are some police officers that once they attain like a certain rank, they're allowed to wear costumes and have, you know, superhero names.
Yeah, exactly. Like most of them, like the street level officers, like they wear a police uniform and they've just got like a yellow mask covering the bottom half of their face. But you've got these other officers who are obviously have some sort of rank. Like you've got Angela as Sister Knight. You've got Wade Tillman, who's known as Looking Glass. You've got Pirate Jenny and Red Scare and Panda and all these other ones.
And Panda, yeah. The guy that wears the giant panda.
Which, you know, all throughout this, up until we find out who Dr. Manhattan is, there was a lot of speculation that Panda might be Dr. Manhattan.
Really?
Yeah, there was a lot of that going on the internet, I remember seeing. Oh,
okay. Now see, that's a new one on me. I never heard that one.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. So then, but one of the interesting ones is so she brings this guy in, and then he gets interrogated by Looking Glass, who's played by Tim Blake Nelson, and I did not recognize it as Tim Blake Nelson in that role. He's so good as this character.
Tim Blake Nelson, again, just like Regina King, he's one of them people that as soon as I see him, okay, I know I'm in good hands, because I don't believe I've ever seen him in anything I didn't like.
Yeah, and he's so good in this. And one of the really cool things, because he is kind of like, so a lot of these characters are kind of analogous to characters in the original. So Sister Knight is kind of more of the Night Owl type in some ways. And then you got Looking Glass, he's more of like kind of a Rorschach type. You get a very Rorschach vibe from him. Like the first time we see him, so he wears a full face mask and he's got it rolled up just to the nose and he's eating something just like Rorschach did when he goes to Dan Dreberg's place in the comic book, right? Dan comes home and finds Rorschach.
And he's eating a can of baked beans.
Exactly, yeah. So there are a lot of little references like that and callbacks. But the cool thing about Looking Glass is he's got this full face mask, very much like Rorschach's, except it's reflective, right? So it's kind of like a twist on Rorschach.
So if you're looking into it, basically you're looking back at yourself.
Right. And it's kind of a nice twist on Rorschach, because when you look at Rorschach's face, right, the ink is always moving on his mask, so you're seeing what you believe. Right, it's more of a reflection of what you feel. Whereas Looking Glass mask, he reflects what you actually are.
What you actually are, yeah. I knew you'd pick up on that. Yeah.
And he does this, and this is the first hints we have of his psychic powers, right? Because he brings them into this this orb type thing, and
Don Johnson, who we haven't mentioned yet, who plays the chief of police, he says, put him in the pod.
Right.
They go in the pod, and I got a very like Blade Runner kind of vibe when they were in the pod.
Yeah, and the images are flashing all around, and Looking Glass is asking them a series of questions. Some of them connect to the case, some of them completely not. And he's kind of like gauging their reactions while these images are flashing in the background. And it's like all sorts of different images. And the cool thing is when the cinematography in this is amazing, because when those images are flashing, you look at Looking Glass's face, and it is kind of like the ink shifting on Rorschach's mask.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just the way they did it was just so masterful.
Again, we see that there was thought put into these characters. And as you say, it's a nice little callback, you know, and okay, you don't have to know anything about the character to appreciate what's going on in the scene right then and there at that moment, because it's just a guy that's interrogating another guy. But if you know background of the original character from Watchmen and everything like that, like you said, like you just pointed out, it's an interesting little callback.
Mm-hmm. And so they find out that the 7th Cavalry, they're gearing up for something. And
oh, wait a minute. Hold on 1 second. Because I had a thought early on, I forgot it, and now it came back to me. This is something that I wanted to ask you something.
Okay.
The 7th Cavalry.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that 7th Cavalry, because I know myself that I've talked to quite a few people who felt that Rorschach was the real hero of Watchmen. I said, now, if you thought he was a hero, then you missed the whole point.
Yeah.
Now, with the 7th Cavalry being a bunch of white supremacists, do you think that the TV show is making a commentary on the people who thought that Rorschach was a hero? I'm
not sure if I go that far. I think they are. I think they're just trying to show, like, they're trying to portray Rorschach in a very honest light in this. And because, like, Rorschach was not necessarily full-on racist, but he was a right-wing sociopathic nut. And I think that's kind of what they're more leaning towards. And it's just, but that kind of thinking, it can easily lead you down that path to being a white supremacist, right? Because we've seen that with a lot of, now that you see that now in American society today, where a lot of these disaffected white guys who, come out of school, they're young, they can't get work, they have trouble dating, all this kind of stuff. They end up turning to these fringe elements, and they end up becoming very easy prey and very easy recruits for the white supremacist movement. I think it's more of a commentary on that as opposed to a commentary on people who misinterpreted what Rorschach was all about.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. It was just something that occurred to me, and I just wanted to get your take on it. Okay.
Yeah. It's a good take, though. But yeah, that's an interesting take. But it is, because I remember there was a lot of people who were pissed off about that when the show came out, because they're like, well, Rorschach's not a white supremacist. And it's like, well, it kind of is.
But you know what? A lot of people thought that he was a hero because he was beating up the quote unquote right people.
Right, which going back to, we talked about this when we talked about the movie, is that was what I felt was one of the failings of the movie, is that it misinterpreted what Rorschach really was. And it's it's kind of like, the Archie Bunker thing, right? When they did Archie Bunker, and the whole idea was he was supposed to be a mockery of, like, this kind of, like, right-wing extremism type of thing, and these beliefs. When what happened is a lot of people agreed with him, so he ended up becoming kind of a folk hero.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they completely missed the point of what they were trying to say with the character, and they said, "Oh, well, this guy, he represents us. He's speaking for us."
Well, you remember when Stephen Colbert was doing the Colbert Report, and it was and he was doing a spoof of right-wing commentators like Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity. But there were a lot of conservatives who thought he was legitimately a conservative commentator.
Yeah. Oh,
and that's why he got invited to do the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
I remember, yeah. You have a lot of people that completely miss the point because they're so You know what? That's one reason why, people in our society don't recognize satire anymore.
Right.
Satire is something that people in this country don't understand anymore. So it goes over their head when they see it.
Yeah,
I think a lot of times. That's why we don't have satires anymore. We don't have movies that that's like a dead thing that's in this country. People don't recognize it for whatever reason. I have no idea why, but that's just me.
Yeah. So the show ends basically, this first episode, with Judd being killed. She comes and she finds him hanging from a tree, right? Which also ties back to the beginning, because in the Bass Reeves movie, they're talking about hang him up, and Bass Reeves says, no, we're not going to do that. And then so it ends with another sheriff being hung, being lynched, basically.
And we should note it, and we should point out that she has been summoned to the tree where he's hanging from by this old man, this weird old man that she's been seeing all throughout the episode. And he's been asking her weird questions and stuff like that. Well, do you think I can, carry 200 pounds and, all kinds of crazy stuff. Old man in a wheelchair, played by Lou Gossett Jr.
Right.
And he calls her on the phone and tells her, listen, come to the tree is located on whatever road it is and whatever. And he said, and don't wear the mask because I know who you are, which of course naturally freaks her out because nobody's supposed to know who she is, except for Don Johnson. He's the only one that knows, the real identity of his masked cops.
Yeah.
The ones, Sister Night and, Looking Glass and those guys. He's the only one that's supposed to know their identity. But she gets there and he holds up a paper, and it's a paper that was given to him when he was a little boy. It said, watch out for this boy. Watch over this boy, rather.
Right, yeah. Right. And we also get a scene with Jeremy Irons playing Adrian Veidt, although he's not identified as Adrian Veidt. But it's this weird kind of like disconnected scene from the rest of the thing, because he's like in this manor. He's got these two servants. They're celebrating an anniversary or something. But I just want to mention that because he's going to become a bigger part. And let's transition into the second episode here, which is Martial Feats of Comanche Horsemanship.
I love the titles of these episodes.
It's so cool how they bring stuff into this. Now it opens up with Will, the little boy, and in the first episode, and then he becomes the old man played by Lou Gossett Jr. It opens up with his father in World War I, and a German plane flies overhead, and it's dropping propaganda onto them, trying to convince black soldiers to go against their white superiors,
which again is something that actually happened. This isn't something that they made up for the thing. This happened in World War I and happened again in World War II.
Yeah.
That, black soldiers, they were encouraged by the Germans. They said, oh, well, why are you fighting for these people? You can't even, go eat in the same restaurants that they do. You ought to come and fight for us or go back home or whatever. Yeah, so this is something that actually happened. They didn't make it up for, the TV show. Again, people tell, did they really do that? And I said, didn't you people study history in school? Yeah, didn't you, don't you people read? Yeah, this actually happened.
Well, see, this is the thing. Like a lot of history's written by the winner. So a lot of a lot of America's bad history is stuff that the history books don't like to talk about. So we don't find out about a lot of this stuff unless we do our own independent research.
Yeah, and that's and you know what? I hate to come off snobbish like that, but since I'm a person that always been interested in the stuff that people didn't want me to know. So I, even when I was a little kid, when I was, 10, 11, 12, whatever, own independent reading. If there was something that was interested in me, I pursued it, So I guess, a lot of people don't for one reason or another, but because a lot of times I get that people say, well, how did you know about this? How did you know about that? And I said, well, I've known it forever, because I read it, back when age. But as you say, a lot of this stuff, and even stuff that, like, for instance, I did not know about until I saw the movie about the other thing that happened in Florida. And then that's how I found out about it. These are things that are just submerged and buried and hidden in culture. And it's almost horrific to think of how much his actual history is suppressed, know about, that's just coming to light now.
Yeah.
50, 60, 70, 100 years later, things that we're just discovering now. It's horrific when you realize, which makes you think how much else has been suppressed that we don't know about.
So this actually reminds me of during one of the Democratic debates, Andrew Yang said he was asked a question about Russia's meddling in elections, and they asked, well, what would you do about as president? He's like, well, I'd go to Putin. I'd say, look, you've meddled in elections, we've meddled in elections, but it's time to stop. We've got to find a different way to do this. And Amy Klobuchar took offense to that, and she's like, oh, how dare you say that the U.S. meddled in elections? We've never done that. And I'm like, bitch, do you not know what the CIA did throughout most of the Cold War?
Go to South America and ask them how they feel about that. And then, go to half of the countries in South America.
Or go to Southeast Asia. Jesus, I mean, come on. I mean, yeah, America's done tons of reprehensible shit all across the world, but it's stuff that, you know, like we said, that's stuff that doesn't get talked about. Like, I did not know about the Tulsa riots until I saw this show. If
for nothing else, that this show made millions of people aware of the Tulsa riot. You know, this to me is worth watching, and I'm glad that it got made. If for nothing else, that it made people aware of it.
Yeah, well, because there was such a huge response to the Tulsa scene, HBO is now partnering with, I believe I could be wrong, I think it's Dark Horse Comics, and they're going to be doing a graphic novel about the Tulsa race riot. So it's a really, which, you know, I'm pretty sure HBO has already got the rights for that, so that will probably be coming down the pike in the future. But so in the present day, like, we find out that Angela and Judd have become friends ever since the White Knight, and then she takes Will to the bakery to interrogate him, and he does a lot of misdirection here, right? He says that I'm your grandfather, but he also says I'm Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah. And no, so you get a lot of that. These early episodes where it's teased that different characters could be Dr. Manhattan. Yeah. Like at one point, like I thought that Jeremy Irons was Dr. Manhattan. Mm-hmm. You know, misdirection. Like, okay, well, and I'm saying, well, wait a minute. Okay, well, he could be Dr. Manhattan. No. I think maybe she's Dr. Manhattan. Uh-huh. And there's a lot of that goes on in these early episodes.
Yeah, and you know, she flat out tells him, you know, he says, you can't be Dr. Manhattan. Dr. Manhattan doesn't have that power. And he's like, well, you know, he can do all this other stuff. Who says he can't change his skin color?
Yeah, which stands to reason.
Yeah, but then when she goes home, right, and she talks to her husband, Cal, you know, played expertly by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who was also Black Manta in Aquaman. He's such a background character throughout so much of this series that, which, you know what? Let's just go ahead and spoil it. We're going to be talking about it in another episode anyway, but he is actually Dr. Manhattan. And and when you're going back and you're watching it with that knowledge, there are sort of those little hints. Like, you know, he says without missing a beat, "Oh, Dr. Manhattan can't do that," right? And he says it in the exact same way that she said it. Almost like he's been programmed to say it that way.
Right. Yeah. But and let me say this, that I did not see that coming. Honestly, did not. We finally find out who Dr. Manhattan actually is. Mm. I said out loud, "Holy shit." Yeah. That was didn't guess it was him.
I had a suspicion in the back of my head, but I figured I didn't think it. Okay, here's what it was. Like, I thought that Cal would be too much of an obvious choice. So I figured, like, if there's any hints of him being...
You're right.
Yeah, I thought if there's any hints of him being Dr. Manhattan, it's going to be misdirection because it's too obvious a route to go down. But for some reason, like the way they handled that revelation, the way they handle his story, even though it does seem obvious when the thought first occurs to you, when you watch it actually happen, it's still like, holy crap, that's amazing.
Yeah, you say, oh man, okay, well, why didn't I see? And you say something, well, why didn't I see that? And and yeah, and then, you know, like later on, like you said, we get that whole revelation, and we get the whole episode where it's laid out for us. Mm-hmm. How Dr. Manhattan ends up being a black man. You say, oh, all right, you know, it's like, which is one thing about this whole thing. And I know there's a lot of people that didn't like Watchmen because they felt it violated too much of what had been established. But I think that's all it's asking you to do is just saying, well, you know something, if you keep an open mind and look at it this way, you'll say, okay, well, you know what? Yeah, it could have happened like that. Yeah, it could be like, it really doesn't violate anything that we've seen before.
No, it doesn't. Like, it actually fits together very nicely because the whole thing about, we find out that Will was Hooded Justice. Like, everyone's like, oh, well, that's not possible. That's again, like, yeah, I'm 100% confident that Alan Moore did not intend for Hooded Justice to be a black guy. You know, I'm 100% confident on that. But it works. right? Because the whole thing about Hooded Justice's identity is it was never revealed in the book. Hollis Mason suspected it was this guy, but he had no proof. There was nothing tying him to that at all.
Right. And it also would explain, because I believe in the comic book that they had said that they speculated that the reason why because him and Silk, he was very good friends with the original Silk Spectre, but they never had a romantic relationship. It was speculated that it was because he was gay. That's why they never had a romantic relationship, which is picked up on here. And when you look at it, you say, okay, now in light of what I see in this series, I go back to the comic book and the movie and look, okay, it could have been that way.
Yeah, they do a really good job of integrating these new ideas into the lore. And so, one of the things she does is, because Will has said I'm your grandfather, she takes some of his DNA to the Heritage Center, and she finds out that, he really is her grandfather. And then, he had mentioned that, Judd had skeletons in his closet. So she sneaks up into his place at the wake, and she finds out that he had a KKK outfit with the sheriff's badge on it.
She does that whole thing where she fakes that, she faints.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she pretends to be sick.
And then Judd's wife Judd's wife takes her up to the bedroom, which is actually kind of smart, so she doesn't have to sneak in.
Right.
And then she has that meeting with Keen. She's talking to him, and it's in that scene where I think he let slip that he knows that, her costume identity as Sister Knight.
Right.
Because, he's not supposed to know it. But he kind of lets it slip that he does know.
Mm-hmm. And so she finds the Ku Klux Klan outfit, and she goes back to Will to take him to arrest him, because Will said that he killed the sheriff, which, he's in a wheelchair and you don't think that's possible. So it really creates this, and that's why he says in the interrogation scene, well, I'm Dr. Manhattan and all that kind of stuff. But then when she's about to take him in, the car just, something clamps down on the car and just pulls it up into the sky, and it's gone.
And she just standing there with like that, what just happened look on her face, It's like a magnetic clamp just comes and just pulls the car up in there. Holy shit, what happened?
And then we go back to the episode ends going back to Veidt in the Strange Manor, and this is one of the hints that is he Veidt? Is he Dr. Manhattan? Because he wrote this play called The Watchmaker's Son, performed by Phillips and Crookshanks, his two servants, and it's all about John Osterman's transformation into Dr. Manhattan. So that's
what made me think that he was Dr. Manhattan, because why else would he be putting on a play about Dr. Manhattan unless Manhattan?
Yeah, that was one of the things that tripped me up too. I'm like, well, is he really Adrian Veidt, or is he Veidt? Is this just misdirection? Like, I wasn't sure what to think of it. But I just got to say, Jeremy Irons is so amazing in these scenes. Like, they're so disconnected from everything else that's happening in the show, but he is just incredible to watch in these scenes. He is just so much fun.
Jeremy Irons is so integrated into this. It's like he's been part of thing all along. Mm-hmm. That is how good. But then again, he's Jeremy Irons.
Yeah.
I mean, a large part of, we've spoken about this before, we'll be saying that a large part of the success of superhero movies and now TV shows, I suppose, is the casting. Mm-hmm. And the casting in this movie is, it's immaculate. I mean, Jean Smart. Oh, I have not, this is a woman that started out, she was doing like the light comedies and everything like that. Who would have suspected she was this good a dramatic actress?
Oh my God. And that's actually a perfect transition into the last episode we're going to talk about today. She was killed by space junk, which I love that title.
I love all the titles.
Yeah, I do too. But that is one of my favorites. Although I think my favorite title is A God Walks Into a Bar, because I love the play on it. But this is a really good one too.
Yeah, the play on words, a bar. Yeah.
Yeah. Now this one is great because because we've seen Adrian Veidt through all this, but this episode, the third episode, brings in Jean Smart as Laurie Blake, and this is a full integration of one of the characters from the comic into the show. And I like that they waited to do that. That they gave some time for people to kind of get to know Angela and Judd and Looking Glass and Cal and all these other characters. And then they bring in the veteran characters from the comic.
We have time to get integrated into, as you say, this new world that we've been putting characters in. If we had just started out with Laurie Blake, I would have said, oh, okay, well, I would have thrown up my hand and said, okay, well, I see what they're doing. You know, they're just playing on old characters and everything like that. But they waited and took their time.
Yeah.
Before they brought her in.
And they use her in such a great way. Like, she is more well done in this series than she was in the comic book. Because in the comic, I always felt like she was kind of underwritten. She didn't get the same amount of character development that the male characters got. But in this, like, that's one of the things, too. That's a nice little twist on it, right? So the original, it was all focused on these middle-aged white men. This show, the focus is on a middle-aged black woman and an old white woman who had no development. So in this show, the women are taking the lead.
True.
And I really like the way they did that. And they did there's some really cool things with. So the first time we see Laurie, she's it seems like she's robbing a bank, and then this guy breaks in, a costume vigilante, who's very much like in the Chris Nolan Batman, right? Even down to the raspy voice and everything.
Yeah.
And then she tells him, like, well, we're not actually robbing this bank. This is a sting operation. and it's like and so you find out that she's now like kind of like a vigilante hunter for the FBI.
Apparently, there are still costume vigilantes that are running around, but it's her since she knows how they think, presumably, because she once was one herself, and her mother was one, and she used to hang out with them. You know, this is what she does. She goes out and she rounds up costume vigilantes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they do such a good job with her. And so one of the things that is that she's now called Laurie Blake. Not Laurie Gispecca, not Laurie Jupiter, but Laurie Blake, which was the comedian's last name. So she is, and also in the Peteypedia files, they mentioned that she had also been, she had changed her costume identity after the events of the movie, because her and Night Owl, they still operated as costume vigilantes, but they end up getting arrested, and there's more about that in the next episode, but. They get arrested, and when they get arrested, she was calling herself the comedienne.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Just different spelling of that. So she had changed her name. So she had kind of come to this. She had kind of come to terms with the fact that Edward Blake was her father.
Because apparently Dan Dreberg, he's still in jail.
Yeah.
You know, they never come out and state it, but there's enough hints. Like she has an owl as a pet. Mm-hmm. And as we saw in the first episode, the police department is using Dan's owl ship, technology that they've appropriated apparently, right, to make their own airships.
Yeah, and in fact, there's that line when Keen comes to visit her, and she's got a pet owl in a cage.
Yeah,
and he says, well, if you help me out, maybe I can help you get your owl out of the cage, meaning Dan Dreberg, who's still in prison.
Right, exactly.
And so she is, they decide to send the FBI anti-vigilante task force to Tulsa to investigate what's happening there. And Laurie refuses the idea of like a whole team going down there. And she says, no, it should just be me. So they don't want her going alone. So they send Agent Petey with her, who's this really interesting like background character who... he says like, I'm not some sort of fan. I studied this stuff academically, but you find out that he also is kind of a fan too.
Yeah, because you know why? Because because they're riding down there. They're flying down there, and he says to her that he brought a mask along to him, and she gives him like this look like, you stupid sack of shit. What do you mean you brought a mask?
Yeah.
So yeah, he is a little bit more than a fan.
Mm-hmm. So she goes into Tulsa, and she starts talking with the cops there. And there's another reference here to Cal being Dr. Manhattan, because when she talks to Angela, she says, I thought maybe you were sleeping with Judd, but then I realized you wouldn't be because I saw your husband who's really hot.
Yeah.
So that's another kind of like little subtle reference to the fact that he is Dr. Manhattan, because she used to be married to Dr. Manhattan.
Right. And apparently, as we find out, she still has a thing for him, because later on we see she opens up that suitcase. Remember? And what does she have in there? Yeah, and it's a giant blue vibrator. I said, okay. When I saw that, I said, okay. And Patricia said, well, why? So why does she have that? I said, don't you remember the movie? And then she said, oh. She said, okay. She said, but it didn't look that big in the movie. I said, yeah, honey, I know. Well, you know what? The man can change his size. Remember, then Patricia said, oh, okay.
Later on, when Abdul Mateen plays Dr. Manhattan, and there's that shot of him naked, Kevin Smith was watching. He said that he was watching the show with his wife, and his wife was like, is that his real dick, or is that just like, is that fake? Is that his bit? He's like, and Kevin Smith's like, no, it's completely fake. It's completely fake.
Yeah, completely. And know what? Women talk about men, because Patricia said, I wonder if is that special effect? Because Patricia said the same thing too. She said, is that CGI? Is that special? I said, yeah. I said, yeah, honey, it's all CGI. Everything is CGI. It's all CGI.
Well, in the movie, it actually was CGI. So yeah, that's not actually Billy Crudup swinging pipe up there. Which, you know what? I feel sorry for the guy who had to animate Dr. Manhattan's giant dick in that movie.
Yeah, going to work every day must have been like, well, what are you gonna do today at work, honey? Hey, don't ask. Yeah. Looking at it
now. Apparently, but this is something in the background. So the vibrator was actually made for her by Dan Drieberg, and it was actually kind of like a fuck you parting gift. Like as a way, it was like him being petty and kind of saying like, well, you still can't get over Dr. Manhattan. So it was kind of like how they ended terms with him giving this kind of like fuck you gift.
Okay, which is
a interesting twist because at first I was wondering where that came from, but apparently in the Peteypedia files, you find out that it was actually it was like his final fuck you to her, because he still felt she was comparing him to Dr. Manhattan. And she also does this thing where her scenes are intercut with her at the Dr. Manhattan booths, because one of the things they do is they have these booths that Lady True, you later find out, is set up where people can leave messages for Dr. Manhattan, who everybody thinks is on Mars. And so she goes and she tells him these jokes. And she tells him these jokes about these three heroes who meet God. And, the first one is Adrian Veidt, and says, he's like, I'm the smartest man in the world. And God says to him, well, what did you do with all this intelligence? And he says, oh, well, I saved humanity. And it's like, how'd you do that? He's like, I killed, X number of people. And he's horrified. And he says, you got all this blood on your hands. And he sends him to hell. And then he asks Night Owl, I gave you this great intellect. What have you done with it? And he's like, oh, well, I became a superhero and I defended people. And he's like, okay, how many people did you kill? He's like, well, I didn't kill anyone. And then he's like, you didn't do enough. And he sends him to hell. And then Dr. Manhattan comes in and says, he was basically a god himself. And he says, well, how many people did you kill? And he's like, well, it doesn't matter, because a living person and the dead person have the same number of particles. There's no difference between them, which is Dr. Manhattan's line from the comic book.
Right.
And God sends him to hell. And then, because she first starts with another joke about a bricklayer. And there's this extra brick after he teaches his daughter how to make something. And then she says, oh, wait. And then she throws the brick in the air. And then she stops that joke. She's like, oh, wait, no, I'm not going to, that's a stupid joke. And then she tells this other joke about the three heroes. And then she ends the joke by saying, and then this girl comes. And God asks, who are you? And she says, I'm the one who threw the brick. And then the brick from the previous joke crashes down and kills God. So I just like, I'm not really sure what the meaning of that joke is. Like, I didn't quite fully get. Did you? What were your thoughts on that?
The fact that her father called himself the comedian was very ironic because he wasn't funny. He wasn't a funny guy.
No, not at all.
That's the whole thing. And she's the daughter of the comedian who tells jokes that are not funny. They're just like these ironic little parables that are more about her thoughts on life than anything. They're really not meant to be funny. They're just the way that she sees life now. Because Laurie at this point when we see her, she's become very hard. She's become very cynical. She doesn't believe in anything anymore. Quite frankly, she doesn't believe in anything. And we have to wonder why she does what she does. Because this is a woman that has been let down by life. And all she's left with is going to these booths. Something that they really don't expand upon. But I was like thinking like maybe there's like this whole cult or religion that sprung up around people who actually worship Dr. Manhattan, but he's a God that they know will actually hear them, and that's why they go in these booths, to talk to him.
Yeah, that was the impression I got as well.
Yeah, that it's a whole religion, a cult that's sprung up around the notion of Dr. Manhattan, because these people in this universe, they know he's there.
Yeah.
They know he's there, and they believe that she's there. And I have to believe that Laurie, that's the one thing that she's holding on to in her life, that Dr. Manhattan is actually listening to her.
Yeah.
It's both kind of sad and sweet at the same time.
Right, because there's that part where she says, I don't know why people use these booths. You never gave a shit anyway. You never could take a joke. And then... and she's like, I know everybody thinks you're listening, but I know you're really not. And then she hangs up and she walks out, and then the car crashes down in front of her and she starts laughing because she thinks, there's this, and you get this sense, was that Dr. Manhattan? Like, is that his way of saying like, fuck you, yes, I am listening.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. That's why she starts laughing. Because she said, oh shit, it's the joke for real. Yeah. Maybe he is listening. He is listening to me, which is when I think that she has a turning point and she actually starts giving a shit again.
Yeah.
Because literally this is a sign from God.
Right. Also, I got to talk about the chemistry between her and Regina King, because that scene when they're together in the tomb and
my God.
I mean, and then that scene when Laurie's being really badass and really convincingly badass too, when she says, I eat heroes for breakfast, right? Like you believe her when she says that line. And then it cuts to Regina King, who's just kind of like stoic, and then she's like, ooh, am I supposed to be scared?
Yeah. It's the part where I get scared now. Yeah. I mean, just watching the two of them. You know what? I could have watched a whole hour of them just doing that scene back and forth. That's how good they are. Oh man, it's just marvelous acting all the way around.
If there is any failing about this show, it's that they do not have more scenes together.
Yeah. Actually, yeah.
That I thought after this episode, like we would be seeing more of them interacting, but we really don't. They don't have a whole lot of interactions. They end up, their stories kind of diverge from this point in a little bit.
And you watch them, and even though this is a superhero show, we're not watching Sister Night and the ex-Silk Spectre. We're watching Laurie and Angela.
Exactly, yeah.
That's who it is. We're watching these two women who both wear costumes. And, they're both wearing costumes and they've called them superheroes and everything like that at different points in their lives for different reasons. The similarities between them are just as much as the differences.
Yeah.
Even though they've done the same thing, they both put on costumes and they went out for whatever reason, because even though this doesn't get into the psychology of people putting on costumes the way that the comic book and the movie did, I think that it does try to underline the whole thing. The whole notion of putting on a mask frees you to be who you really are. And when you don't wear that costume, when you don't wear that mask, then who are you?
Yeah. And you definitely feel that with Laurie, because especially, like, even though she's part of this anti-vigilante task force, like, she's got all these things and even though in the comic, you know, she resented having been a superhero at one point, like, you see that she's kind of got a bit of nostalgia for that time in her life, because she does have the, like, the painting in her apartment, which is of the Dr. Manhattan, Ozymandias, Night Owl, and Silk Spectre. And she's got that hanging up in the background. Mm-hmm. And, you know, she's got the Dr. Manhattan vibrator. So there is this kind of longing, in a way, for that past. And, yeah, there is this kind of sense that, you know, she changed her identities in more ways than one. She went from being the Silk Spectre to the comedian. She changed her name from... And it's funny because in the comic book, the whole reason she goes by Jespeckwitz is because her mom took on the name Jupiter because she was trying to hide the fact that she was Polish.
Jupiter, yeah. Right, exactly. And she resented that. Matter of fact, you know something, Laurie spent a lot of her life resenting one thing or another.
Yeah.
You know?
And this seems like her trying to come to terms with that, because that's why she takes on her father's name, both when she becomes the comedian in the background of this show, and also when she takes his last name, right? So there's these interesting little ways they work with her character in very subtle ways too, but that says so much about what they're doing with her.
Yeah, the characterization of Laurie in this show is very subtle, which I appreciate, because in the movie and in the comic, she was a subtle character. Mm-hmm. Like you said, this TV show brings her to the forefront in a way she never enjoyed before, but it's still subtle. There are things that, I mean, you know, you pick up on, and she just drives the story forward in ways that I didn't think that she would, because all along I was wondering, well, at some point or another, is she going to put the costume back on? And I was glad she didn't.
Yeah, same here, because that would have been such a step back for what they were doing with her. And
yeah, because that's not right. Exactly. That would have been a step back, because that's not who she is now.
So, and then this is also the episode when they fully reveal that Jeremy Irons is playing Adrian Veidt, because which, you know, everybody kind of knew going into it, but this was when it first is made obvious. And he even wears the costume, right? He wears the Ozymandias costume.
Yeah.
Which I was not expecting them to do that.
Looks pretty good in it.
Yeah.
He looked pretty good in the costume.
Yeah, and you know, I think this is probably the moment when, if people didn't quite get the hint with the squids falling, I think this is probably the moment when people would realize, okay, this is definitely a sequel to the comic and not the movie, because in the movie, you remember his costume was completely different. It was very much like a Joel Schumacher-esque Batman and Robin style rubber suit. Whereas this, it's full on the Dave Gibbons costume from the comic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is faithful. Like you said, the one that's in the movie was more superhero-y. Mm-hmm. You know, it was something you would see that was in a superhero movie. No, this is, exactly the costume from the comic book. Yeah, definitely.
And it is amazing how well they were able to make it look while still being extremely faithful. Like, I was not expecting, if you told me that Jeremy Irons is going to put on the Ozymandias costume and it's going to look exactly like it did in the comics, I would have said that's going to look ridiculous. But it does totally work in this scene. As
a matter of fact, he looks more like the Ozymandias from the comic book than the we did.
Oh, absolutely. Actually. Yeah. And that's something guys, go back to our Watchmen episode if you want to hear our thoughts about that, because I went off a bit on Matthew Good in that, because it felt like they were really trying to they were trying to make him as effeminate as possible in that movie. But here, I mean, Jeremy Irons, he's a strapping guy even at his age, and he's and he fills out that costume very well. And you can easily believe that if you use that CGI technology where they de-age someone, and I'm not sure if Jeremy Irons had blonde hair or not, but you give him blonde hair, he would look just like Ozymandias in the comic books.
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, so that's something that I was waiting for them to do the thing and maybe have a flashback scene of him and do the de-aging thing. I was waiting on that, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they did it to a small extent when they played the video message that Vike gave Robert Redford, because that's, it's like in 94 or something like that. So that's about 10 years later.
Right.
So I think they did a little bit there, but not as much as if it was made in the 80s or something like that.
Well, you know what? I'm a note to look for that when I get up, because all I did, since we were going to be discussing the first 3 episodes, that's all I watched yesterday. When I was, I said, okay, well, I'm going to, you know what? I was tempted to keep on watching because you know what? I got caught up in the thing to the point where I think I was at an episode and I was forgetting to take notes because I done got caught up in the story all over again. I said, oh shit, I'm supposed to be watching this critically, so I got a job. But no, I was,
Yeah, I was the same way too, because this, okay, so most TV shows I don't buy. I don't usually buy TV shows as a rule. I wait for them to come to Netflix, but there are very few TV shows that I feel like I have to own, just because it's like so many of them are available on streaming. I can just easily watch them through Netflix or Hulu or whatnot. This is a show that I felt like I should buy. So I did. I went and I bought it on iTunes. So I bought the whole series on iTunes in HD. And because this is a show that I can see myself rewatching every year or something like that.
I could name to you on the fingers of one hand the TV shows that I've bought. I have Gunwood Travel, because that's my favorite Western. I have Nash Bridges, because that's my favorite TV cop show. I've got Secret Agent Man. I'm like you. I don't really buy complete sets of TV series, but I'm going to buy this one because as far as we know right now, even though there are little hints and everything like that, right now, this is going to be the only series of Watchmen that we get. I want to get all the extras and everything like that, along with it. So, yeah, I can see myself buying this one.
Yeah. And there are only a handful I own. I've got Cowboy Bebop. I've got
I got that one too. Yeah, I got Cowboy Bebop.
The short-lived Clerks TV show. I got Firefly, and that's about it. Everything else, and now Watchmen. But most TV shows, I did at one point. I had what was it? I had all the seasons of Buffy and Angel, but I don't know what happened to my discs with that. So, but that was also back when it was still DVD stuff.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, other than that, if I was gonna go back now, I would probably not buy those shows again because I could just watch them on Hulu now.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, TV shows are so available now to watch on so many platforms. I don't really see the need, and the only reason I bought like I said, I have Gunwood Travel, I bought that for the nostalgia value more than anything else. And I got Nash Bridges. Like I said, that's my favorite, cop show. And I'm supposed to be doing a project with another podcast, so we're supposed to be doing that series, but I'm not big into buying.
Oh, cool.
I'm not big into buying TV series. I buy movies at the drop of a hat, but not TV series. But yeah, Watchmen, I think I'm going to buy this one too. Because it makes a nice companion. You know what? Because it makes a nice companion piece. I mean, with the movie, it does.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else we want to talk about for these 3 episodes? Anything else we wanted to touch on?
There was something that came to my mind, but now it's escaped me. I'll make a note of it because I'll probably think about it at 2:00 in the morning. And when we come back for the second part, I'm going to open with that because it was something about Don Johnson. I think I wanted to make. Oh, I wanted to. Yeah. The thing about Don Johnson, did you get The whole thing with him doing the cocaine that was in the bathroom, you think that was because cocaine is legal in this universe? Because
I think, yeah,
it was a strange little part where he just goes in. He does it so nonchalantly, like he doesn't try to hide it or anything like that.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think that makes sense because the whole war on drugs thing was really a Reagan era policy, right? So
yeah,
it makes sense that if you get President Robert Redford, that you're going to have a change in the way some of the things think. And it seems like there were a lot of society evolved in different ways here. Like they didn't have as much technology, but they're a more progressive society, like with reparation. So it does make sense that there probably would have been some degree of drug decriminalization as well. Because she also says, like he did a little cocaine, but that was it, as if it's nothing.
Yeah. And you know what? That caught my attention because, like you said, as far as the world building goes, it's so many little things that are thrown in there. And even like I said, when I was watching it, yes, there was all these little subtle things that I was picking up that I hadn't caught before when I watched it before. And I was just wondering, well, why did they throw that? Were they trying to make a statement, or was it just something or were they trying to say? And just like you said, she said it so nonchalantly, like I was saying, well, damn, he's a cop, why, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, but I think I think that about covers everything for these first 3 episodes. Like this show it's just flat out amazing, and like watching it again, right? Watching these first 3 episodes again after seeing, I still felt like as invested in it and as like on the edge of my seat as I was when I watched them the first time.
The only reason why we don't, because you know something, we could come back next week and we could still do another 2 hours just on these 3 episodes alone. Really, that's how much is in it.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely.
Believe me, folks, we didn't even cover half. As much as we covered in these 2 hours, still didn't cover half of what's in these episodes, the meat and potatoes of everything that's in these episodes. You have to watch it for yourself if you haven't seen it already. And I'm sorry for the spoilers, because I know there's going to be somebody out there that's going to be saying, well, I don't have HBO and spoil it. Well, listen, don't get me started.
It's on iTunes, so you can go to iTunes. You can buy the whole series right now. It was like $20 when I bought it, I think. So it's not. So yeah, you can go to iTunes. You can buy it, and it's well worth the price because it's such a good series.
But you just know that there's going to be somebody that's going to listen to this and they're going to say, well, I just want to hear what you guys thought about it. Yeah, but you haven't seen it yet. So how would you know what we're talking about anyway?
Well, I mean, a show like Watchmen, you cannot do a spoiler-free review of these episodes. You just can't. Like, there's no way we could cover. We could do like a general overview. Like when we talked about the Watchmen movie, we did some kind of like general comments about the TV show then, as it was still in progress. But you know what? This show there's so much that happens in each episode, right? You think of a normal TV show, 22 episodes, or even like a streaming show that's like 10 to 13 episodes. Like, there's padding in those shows. Like we talked about with the Marvel Netflix shows, the middle episodes feel very soggy because there's just like a lot of navel gazing in those episodes, like a lot of padding out. But Watchmen, so much happens in these 9 episodes. And
this actually reminds me a lot of, believe it or not, Twin Peaks.
Yeah, that thought never occurred to me, but you are absolutely right. It's got a very Twin Peaks feel to it.
And not only that, but Twin Peaks was like how many episodes was that? That was like 10 or 12?
Yeah, the first season was only like 10 or 12 episodes, and then the second season I think was like 22.
No, I'm talking about this last.
Oh, the last I didn't see the new one.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about, the new one.
Oh, okay.
Because the last one was okay, let's say for the purposes of this argument that it was 12 parts. It was 12 parts, but it actually wasn't 12 single episodes. It was actually a 12-hour movie shown in individual segments. The feeling that I got from watching this TV series, that it was more like a 9-hour movie told in 1 hour segments, if that makes any sense.
Oh, so look, it's like it was actually like 18 episodes.
Oh, 18. Okay, well, then 18-hour movie.
Yeah.
Told in hour-long segments. That's what it felt like to me. It felt like I was watching a 9-hour movie told in 1 hour segments.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we've also got a little bit of an announcement about the show. So because of
We do.
Yeah, well, we talked about this at the beginning. You'll know what I'm talking about when I get to it. So, well, first off, two things. Two things. First off, I have been doing these news segments about like superhero movie and TV news, and I've been doing those like every week, like 15, 20 minutes, however long it takes to get through all the superhero related news for that week. But this coronavirus, it's been shutting down production of so much stuff. Like Black Widow's release is
left and right, man.
Left and right, yeah. The Arrowverse shows have stopped production. The Batman has stopped production. Shang-Chi has stopped production. All these movies that were currently being made, they've stopped filming. So there's not really a lot of news to talk about. I'm actually going to be putting a stop to those segments for the time being, and then when everything goes back to normal or whatever the new normal ends up being, we'll see how it works out. Then maybe I'll go back to them. But instead, what we are going to be doing is, Derek and I talked, and because I'm not really working that much right now, and he works from home anyway, and plus he's in New York where they've got everything locked down anyway. We've been talking that for the time being, we're going to be doing weekly episodes of the show.
So we're going to be doing it weekly. Hopefully for for everybody that's stuck at home, if you've been enjoying this, you're going to be getting even more of what we do best. So hopefully you'll enjoy it, and we will all get through this thing, whatever it is. And like Perry said, when we get back to the new normal, we're going to be doing our part to try to help you and help us as well, because this is just as much therapy for us to help get us through this for us as it is for you, because this is a tough time, and God only knows where we're going to be. Me and Perry were talking about this earlier on. God only knows where this country is going to be in a couple of months from now. I'm optimistic. I always believe in faith over fear. So I'm just going to pray that, we'll all be okay and we're going to come out of it. And in the meantime, we're just going to keep doing what we do. That's it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Bingo.
Okay, so head on over to superherocinephiles.com. Go to Superhero Cinephiles Facebook group. Join in the discussion there. Talk about the show. I actually just posted a link to the Peteypedia stuff, so you can read some of the background and supplemental material for the series. And then, next week we're going to be back talking about the next 3 episodes. So we're going to be talking about episodes 4 to 6, which in that batch has one of my favorite episodes, which is the background of Will as Hooded Justice.
Spectacular episode.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get to that one. See, that's why I had to stop watching it. Yes, because if I kept on, I would have watched the whole thing all over again.
No
problem at all.
Because episode 4 is the Looking Glass episode. But if episode 4 had been the Will episode, I probably would have just kept on watching. And it's not because I didn't like the Looking Glass episode, but it's just like, I said, okay, well, I can stop here now. And we're gonna see.
But I like the look. See, but something. I like the Looking Glass episode because it wasn't because you were talking earlier on about the parallels between him and Rorschach, and I was glad to see that his origin, that Looking Glass origin, wasn't what I thought it was going to be, because I thought it was going to be similar, to Rorschach's origin, and I'm delighted that it didn't turn out that way.
Yeah, same. And I like the Looking Glass episode, don't get me wrong, but there's not as much of a need to watch it as there would have been if the next episode had been the Will episode.
Well, the Hooded Justice episode, to me, that's like the pivotal, that's the one that really stands everything on its head.
Yeah. So yeah, these next 3 episodes are going to be really interesting.
Everything that.
Go ahead.
No. I was going to say that everything that you thought that you knew, and you always hear that. Oh, this episode is going to change everything that you know, or this issue changes everything forever. Well, that episode truly does change everything forever.
Yeah.
Which is why I love it so much.
Yeah. That episode is just it. And these next 3 episodes in general, they go very deep into the lore of the comic book. So like they did such a good job of setting this up, right? Because they did these first 3 episodes where it introduces the character and it kind of light ways it connects it to the original. The next 3 episodes dive really deep into the connections with the original. And then the last 3 episodes are like the big finale.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, head on over.
As a matter of fact, now that you say, yeah, that's a good structure. It's like the first 3 episodes are the beginning, the second 3 episodes are the middle, and the final 3 episodes are the end.
It is. Yeah. It is really like a trilogy, like a movie trilogy when you think of it that way.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Yeah.
Okay.
I learned something new. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new.
So head on over to superherocinephiles.com, join the Facebook group, join in with the discussion, talk about the series, because, and if you haven't seen it yet, then go to iTunes right now and buy it, because if you are a fan of Watchmen, especially if you were a fan who was disappointed in the movie like I was, then you owe it to yourself to buy this series, because it is such an amazing follow-up to the book. Absolutely. No argument here. All right, so that does it for us, and we will be back next week with episodes 4 to 6 of Watchmen. Okay. Looking forward to it. This is Derek Ferguson in Brooklyn. And I'm Perry Constantine in Kagoshima, and we will talk to you guys next week. Good night and God bless. Thanks for listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other episode, or if you have a superhero movie or TV show you'd like us to cover in a future episode, you can email us at superherocinephiles@gmail.com, or you can also visit us on the web at superherocinephiles.com. If you like what you hear, leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Each review helps us reach more potential listeners. You can also support the show by renting or purchasing the movies discussed, or by picking up our books, all of which can be accessed through the website, as well as find links to our social media presences. The theme music for this show is a shortened version of Superhero Showdown, a royalty-free piece of music courtesy of BesleonStudios.com.